Today on Spero News, we're going to be speaking to attorney Ethin Bevins. He's an attorney with the public interest firm located in Bellevue, Washington, called the Pacific Legal Foundation. They have several offices across the country, including Washington, D.C., and we're interested in talking to him about a recent case that he litigated in Seattle. Ethin, could you tell me a little bit about this case that you had concerning invasion of privacy?
Sure. So in July of 2015, we filed a lawsuit on behalf of 8 Seattle residents challenging a law in Seattle that essentially has garbage collectors snooping through people's garbage cans on a weekly basis to look for food waste, which is prohibited in Seattle. You can't throw food in the garbage. And so we challenged that law as a violation of Seattle residents' privacy rights. And just yesterday, Judge Andrus of the King County Superior Court in Seattle agreed with us.
So you weren't challenging the law which requires people to compost all their inedible food. Is that right?
That's right. We weren't challenging the actual ban. We were just arguing that the enforcement method of weekly inspection of people's garbage cans was a violation of state constitutional privacy rights.
Now, what was the defense that the city or whatever jurisdiction it was using?
Well, the city argued that it shouldn't be held to the same standard as police. For example, we already have in Washington State a Supreme Court case that says that the state's constitutional privacy right forbids police from hunting through your garbage can without a warrant. And we relied directly on that precedent and said that that rule should apply to any government agent, whether they are a garbage collector or a police officer. And the city tried to limit that Supreme Court case to the criminal law enforcement context. The problem being that the standard clearly applies to any government officer, whoever they may be.
Now, that was that before the United States Supreme Court or the Supreme Court of the state of Washington?
I'm sorry, I should have clarified. That was the Supreme Court of Washington interpreting the state constitutional privacy right.
I see. Now, but what's to prevent, for example, let's say a journalist from snooping through someone's garbage to get information about maybe their lifestyle, their choice in reading material, for example?
Sure. Well, the privacy right, the state constitutional privacy right, is a right against government. So it only applies to government actors. If a private individual, like a reporter, is searching through your garbage, you may still have grounds for a lawsuit under just the common law right to privacy, but that would be a slightly different legal issue.
So how is this a victory for privacy? If someone happens to see that I've ate some apples and found some spots on them and threw out that, why should that be of any interest to defenders of the constitutional rights?
Well, we can reconstruct a lot about a person's life by the contents of their garbage can, which I think is evident by the fact that our garbage cans are of such interest to individuals like identity thieves. But much can be learned by a simple search through the garbage can, such as your reading habits, your eating habits, your professional status, even things like your sexual practices. That's the sort of information that is available for someone who snoops through your garbage can. And we believe that, increasing government intrusion into the minutiae of our everyday lives is something we should be concerned about, even when it's something as simple as garbage collection.
Well, what would you say to the argument as well? If you're not doing anything wrong, why should you worry?
Well, the right to privacy applies regardless of whether or not you are violating, the law. We have a right to be free of the government's involvement in our lives. And government, Thomas Paine said, is a necessary evil at best and an intolerable one at worst. And so it's important to impose those limits early and often in order to prevent increasing government encroachment in our daily lives.
So, are there any ramifications that this victory in the court will have in other privacy matters?
I hope so. One of the reasons we felt like this was a really key case is because it sets an important precedent. It helps establish this. It draws the line between proper government behavior and improper intrusion into private affairs a little more clearly. And I hope that it will have precedent for perhaps things like smart meters, which have been a privacy concern in the past. Certainly I hope it'll set a precedent for other municipalities that may want to do things like this. And it just establishes a clear principle that our Constitution's alive and well, and that government has to abide by it, even if their goals are virtuous.
Now, you mentioned smart meters. Are you talking about the electronic meters used for measuring electric use?
Correct. Yeah, those have been controversial as well, and that's of course a conversation for another day. But that's just one example of many of the current ongoing privacy issues in our lives. And I think that we've seen a resurgence of interest in privacy. With NSA leaks to the recent Apple iPhone controversy. I think that's an indicator that people care about their privacy, even if they're engaged in perfectly lawful conduct. They think that the government shouldn't be able to be snooping around into their lives. And so this is an important reminder that is a principle that's important to uphold.
So what is the principle involved?
Well, to quote the Washington State Constitution directly, it says that no person shall be disturbed in his private affairs or his home invaded without authority of law, which means that the government can't invade private affairs without a warrant. Now, so it's a kind of a two-part question. The first part being, is the government looking into something that is a private affair or not? And the second question is whether or not they have a warrant to do so. And since the founding of our country, the founding fathers were very concerned about what they called general warrants, where police would have a warrant that would allow them to go around and pretty much search a block, for example, of houses, or a general warrant that would allow them to search just about anyone's private affairs. That's something that our founding fathers have felt we should be concerned about. We don't want government looking into our private affairs on a regular basis unless they have a warrant that establishes they have a right to do so.
Now, I noticed that Judge Washburn is an appointee by President Obama. Does she have any previous rulings on privacy that may have led her to this decision?
Well, actually, the judge here was Judge Andrus.
I'm sorry, Andrus.
No problem. Yeah, and she. This was a state court case, although she has. You're correct that she was recently appointed to the federal bench.
I see. I get it.
Right. Yeah. So she was actually appointed the day before our hearing with her, so she'll be moving on to the federal bench. I think that she has some background with the ACLU. The ACLU, of course, has had a history of being involved in privacy matters. I think privacy is an issue where we can reach across the ideological spectrum. I think generally, whether you're conservative, whether you're liberal, whether you're libertarian, we tend to, I think, converge when it comes to our view of privacy. We want government out of our lives regardless of the goal behind it. So even though composting may be a liberal issue, it may be something that environmentalists tend to support, we can support that principle without sacrificing our privacy rights.
Is there any would you think there's any sort of way that that citizens are being compelled to compost their their food could be addressed in court?
Well, the actual ban itself was something that Judge Andrews was careful to say she was not overruling. So she said, this is something that's a valid use of government power, and I think that is probably correct as a legal matter. It's just the enforcement method that she had a concern with and we had a concern with. I think it would be hard to find a legal basis for just saying, hey, governments can't forbid you from throwing food in the trash. That might be sort of a political matter, something that feels very intrusive because government's really getting more and more involved in these small, sort of minute, everyday decisions. But as a legal matter, it's hard to know how that might be challenged.
Now, I know the Pacific Legal Foundation has been involved in numerous cases involving privacy. Can you identify any issues that may be coming up for the foundation?
We don't have any specific privacy cases upcoming. It's something that we're always keeping an eye out for. Some of our concerns are residential inspections. We do a lot of property rights work as well. And one of the areas where we see property and privacy rights converging is where government officers are allowed to search through, for example, an apartment complex to see whether or not it's in compliance with building code. And sometimes landlords will object to that and say, my tenants have a privacy right that you need to honor. You need an administrative warrant or something that allows you to come in and search through my tenants' lodgings to see if they're in compliance with the building code. So that's a common one that is something that we are kind of always on the lookout for, and I think we'll see future cases and issues like that.
What are the sorts of privacy issues that I guess I could say that keep you up at night, for example?
Well, I think that we see a lot of privacy problems with regards to technology. Of course, that's been an area where we're really we've seen a lot of media coverage. Digital privacy is a big issue. Government collects lots and lots of information about people who have to deal with the government in a variety of ways. And they maintain and use that information for a variety of purposes. And I think there's a lot of concern that how they might be able to use that information, to whom they might be able to sell that information, and so forth. I think that's an area of serious concern for privacy advocates.
Is Facebook an area of concern? I know that there have been some articles published that Facebook collects information and actually may be driving people to political decisions.
I am not as familiar. I've seen some of the same articles you're talking about, but I haven't been personally involved with them, so I'm not sure exactly what the legal challenges might be surrounding Facebook or Google or other similar internet service providers.
Tell me something about your background. What is it that perhaps drove you to become interested in issues of this type?
Well, ever since I went to law school, I've been very interested in public interest work, and that's what the Pacific Legal Foundation does. We represent people. At no charge. We don't bill our clients. Instead, we look for particular issues that we feel are important to liberty, and I've always wanted to be an attorney who fought for freedom. I think that we see increasing government control of our lives. We see judges who tend to rubber stamp government action, and so I've always wanted to be involved in the liberty movement through my law degree, and this provides a great opportunity.
Well, thanks very much. We really appreciate it, being able to talk to you today about this case. I'm sure there'll be others like it, and we hope to get back to you.
Absolutely, yeah. Please feel free to contact me in the future, and I'm sure we'll see other privacy cases that the Foundation's involved in.
We've been talking today to Ethin Bevins of the Pacific Legal Foundation. He's litigated a case with ramifications of privacy and constitution issues in the United States, but they're in the state of Washington. Thanks very much. I'm Martin Barrios for Spero News.